Hello everyone, and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and we're taking a look at a great game between Leela-Zero and Ethereal, TCEC Cup 10, Round 16. Well, Leela has won some great games against Ethereal in the King's Indian, and, well, this cup matchup gave us one extra. This was a really nice game. How did the opening come about? Well, there were some rather strange move orders, but after things got a little bit settled, we got into a very typical King's Indian structure. Blacks played e5 to gain some central space, whites replied with d5, blocking the dark squared bishop in behind the e5 pawn. And black plays knight a6. Black's got a little bit of pressure on the centre, maybe some possibilities to well, open up the queen side, maybe get some play on the c-file. And also black's kept c5 free for the knight, so the knight can attack the pawn on e4. Now, yeah, I mean, I was taught that knight c5 really had to be met by knight d2. So what I was always doing in these types of positions was playing the bishop either to e3 or to g5 to make sure that after knight c5 I can play knight d2 and not block in the bishop on c1. And, well, a typical sequence of moves in the King's Indian is bishop e3, then knight g4, disruptive, before white manages to get in knight d2, bishop g5, f6, maybe bishop h4, and this is very typical King's Indian play. However, what my engines did, and also what Leela did, was just to play the move h3. Not fearing knight c5, I'm just going to play queen c2. Yeah, I mean, I always thought this was a slight waste of a move, really, just less efficient play from white. I mean, after all, in the end, you'll play bishop e3, and then knight d2, and, well, you'll just have wasted a tempo. Wouldn't it be great if you could have avoided queen c2? But actually, it doesn't really seem to make much difference. For example, this is a game Stockfish against Komodo Dragon, a5, bishop e3, queen e7, rook fd1, rook e8, b3, bishop d7, rook c1, h5, bishop f1. Yeah, you know, you play knight d2 later, but then you put the queen on b2, and then white's going to play a3 and b4. You know, that wasted, maybe little wasted tempo or a half-wasted tempo, queen c2, hasn't really mattered. Black isn't really getting at the white position too quickly. In actual fact, you know, Ethereal didn't even bother to play knight c5, just played knight e8 immediately, looking for f7 to f5. And now bishop g5, typical little move, f6, bishop e3. You know, why do you play bishop g5 and then bishop e3? I think the point is simply that f6 looks a bit ugly. You know, the bishop on g7 is blocked in, and the knight on e8 can't move to f6. If you played bishop e3 immediately, maybe black might be able to think of something else. Who knows? But after f6, well, black's pretty much committed to playing f5 very soon afterwards. After f5, then c5 was what my engines wanted. There was some sharp play here. f4 takes, fe, bishop c4, but this was basically pretty good for white here. King h8, queen d2, takes, and knight and rook f1 first, and now knight a4. And well, white's going to pick up the pawn on c5. Come knight g5. Clear advantage for white, and well, this was turning out very nicely in my engine games. So black plays c5 just to seal the centre, and then after king h1, very subtle, typical Leela move this one, f5. So at first sight, this doesn't look too bad for black. I mean, you know, the queen side is sealed. There's no quick white counterplay there. Centre is sealed, and you're gaining space on the king side. I mean, if you get an f4, then you can think of following up with g5 and h5. Could be a big king side initiative for black. But Leela's idea is truly brilliant. E takes f5, g takes f5, and then rook g1. I mean, these are always slightly difficult positions to evaluate in the King's Indian. I mean, you give black these sort of hanging pawns in the centre. You know, can they advance? Can they not? You know, f4 of course gives an e4 square that's a bit loose. E4, well, makes the f4 square weak. And you know, the problem with the black pawns is if you're going to advance them, you've got to advance both of them and then keep on going. If you have to stop and you have to concede just a hold to white, like the e4 square or the f4 square, then yeah, that's not particularly great. Well, Ethereal decided that now wasn't the time, and so it played queen e7. And now another very interesting move, bishop g5. Just a disruptive little move, attacking the queen on e7, and also getting the bishop ahead of the f-pawn. And that means that if you play a move like queen f7, for example, then Leela was intending to play g4. Now, what's the point? The point is that f4 now, it's not going to attack a bishop on e3. So if you play f4, well, I can straight away start looking at gaining control of the e4 square and occupying it. If you play e4, then I've probably got something like knight h4, and of course f4 is not attacking a bishop, so the e4 pawn is hanging. So yeah, just nice play really. I mean, in my engine games, f takes g4 was what well, both Stockfish and Komodo were playing. Then this lovely move knight h2, and we're going to see this an awful lot. You know, when black plays f takes g4, also in the game, well, it's not just capturing back, but well, doing everything either to leave the g file open, or well, in the game you'll see something even nicer in actual fact. But king h8, knight takes g4, queen g6, queen d2, and well, I mean, white's just going to double up on the g file, get the bishop onto the b1 h7 diagonal, and black's king is in real danger there. So what Ethereal did was bishop f6, and you know, at first sight it looks quite good. Swap off the dark squared bishop. That is the bishop that's on the same color squares as your center. The only problem with swapping off the dark squared bishop in the King's Indian is that it means that when you play e5 to e4, well, you're not activating a dark squared bishop. You know, this bishop is often bad for long periods of time, but when you open the center, when the center opens up, when you play e4, suddenly it becomes a monster. If you exchange it off, you don't have that that long-term static weakness of a bad bishop, but it does mean that that your potential dynamism is much less. So Leela didn't worry, just played queen d2, bishop g5, queen g5, swapping off the queens there. Queen g7, and now g4. Now again, you know, black's key problem is that black doesn't really want to play this move f4. We just bring our knight into e4, attacking the pawn on d6. Lovely square, can't even be chased away by a bishop on f5 because the pawn on g4 is preventing that. So Ethereal took on g4, and well, the idea clearly here is that you know, Ethereal's looking for white to play h takes g4, and then, well, you know, we've got the f4 square for counterplay. The g file is closed. There's not any immediate danger there. But that wasn't Leela's idea at all. Leela's idea wasn't to take back with the h pawn on g4. Leela played knight g5, h6, and now knight e4. And well, actually, one of the big threats for white is just to take with the bishop, then take with the rook, and then double up the rooks on the g file, when the black king's going to be in real problems. So what did Ethereal do? Ethereal played rook f4, and again, you're just trying to tempt white to take on g4. You're going to swap off and block the g file, and then hopefully, well, you know, get your knights in and unravel a little bit. Not a great position for black, but maybe survivable. But Leela played a fantastic idea. Bishop g4, and f3. So, well, the first point is that if rook f3, I just take, I go rook g1, and if something like knight b4, I just go rook to h4, and just threatening knight g5 check, which is just massive. So in the game Dragon against Stockfish, Stockfish couldn't think of anything better than just to give up the exchange, but this is obviously very, very good for white. So Ethereal played the move knight b4, quite sensible, getting the knight active, looking maybe to come in c2 to d4, or maybe d3 and later to f4. And you'd expect Leela to take on g4, you know, immediately, but Leela doesn't bother. Just rook f1 first of all, rook to d8, defending the pawn on d6, knight e2, rook f8, and now the key point. I mean, rook g4, something like that wouldn't be so bad, but Leela's just going for the positional option, which is to play f takes g4. Now, why do you want to play f takes g4 rather than h takes g4? Well, the point after h takes g4, I mean, Komodo was doing this a lot in all sorts of structures. It's still very strong. I mean, the pawn on g4 gives some great outposts on for the knight on f5 or h5. And of course, you've also got possibilities of g5, opening up the g file, and then attacking the black king. But f takes g4 is really nice, because the point is now these two pawns are capable of creating a pass pawn on the king side. So that's something that's going to be able to keep the black king tied down on the king side, and then you can start looking to start unraveling black's queenside pawn structure, and the black king won't be able to assist because it has to look after a passed pawn. It's just a gorgeous way of turning this well, I suppose you'd call it a bit of a wreck of a pawn structure into something well, very, very beautiful and capable of creating a passed pawn. It's just adding enormous value to the white position. Well, Leela was already thinking that this was completely winning basically, and well, Stockfish too, of course. So knight f6 played by Ethereal, takes, knight g3, threatening knight h5 check, also getting into contact with well, some other great squares, takes, and it's just not really possible for black to keep the white pieces at bay. I mean, we've got knight h5 check, we've got knight f5 check, forks, it's just impossible really. So b5 was played by Ethereal, just trying to shake things up. I mean, you could take the pawn on a2, but then I'll check, I'll go rook a1, and rook takes a7, and well, again, I'm threatening the pawn on b7, and I've also have knight f6 to e4 attacking the pawn on d6. So you can't go rook d7, and if you go something like rook b8, then I guess that knight f6 check, king somewhere, well, knight d7 is possible, knight e4 is possible as well, attacking the d6 pawn. It's just really, really painful for black. So b5 was played, not stupid at all, just trying to well, break open the queenside structure and also exchange off some pawns. Obviously, the fewer pawns on the board, the more drawing chances you've maybe got. But knight f5 check, king g6, knight e7, and c takes b5. A really nice idea. The knight on e7 with tempo, defending the pawn on d5, so this knight on b4 isn't doing anything. After knight d3, I mean, you could just give up this b2 pawn, but Leela doesn't even want to do that. Just b3, intending a4, supporting the pawn on b5, and well, I mean, we can create a passed pawn with these two, but now we can create a passed pawn with the a and b as well. So on both sides now, Leela can create a passed pawn, and well, it's one of those things, that Ethereal's trying to break open the position to well, take away the flexibility that white had, but at the same time it's wrecking its own position, and well, yeah, you just can't do much about it in the end. a4, h5, g takes h5, takes, knight c6, rook d7, king g2, and well, I mean, this, we're just going a5, a6, b6, and then a7. It's just really, really easy here. So yeah, what can you do? Leela just plays around a little bit, gets its rook into play. Rook comes after the d pawn. D pawns get swapped. Now we take the c pawn, and well, this is really, really bad. Rook h7, rook d7, takes, rook a7. Now, of course, the funny thing about it is that Leela's assessing this as completely winning, so you just say, ah, yeah, okay. I must say that in a blitz finish, if I had the king, knight, and the rook around with a pawn, I'd be feeling just a touch nervous, about a good way of converting. But e3. Black threatening rook h1 checkmate, but Leela's not too worried. A few well-timed checks, and b7, the pawn is close to queening. Rook h8, a8, and well, the game didn't last very long. a6, a7, a8 is coming in. I mean, I thought that was a really gorgeous game, I have to say. First of all, yeah, just interesting point for me that that the engines aren't afraid of this, defending the e-pawn with queen c2. Quite, yeah, something that just maybe corrects something that I'd learned as a child. I loved that the maneuvers, though, taking on this this sort of hanging pawn structure in the center. This maneuver, king h1, rook g1 to prepare g4, really, really nice. You do see it quite a lot from the top engines against these sort of check Benoni structures. Exchange of the dark squared bishops wasn't completely obvious to me, but yeah, makes perfect sense when you reason it. But in particular, this whole idea of playing g4, taking on g4, and then playing f3 and taking on g4, really making the most of your pawn structure, converting a bit of a ropey structure with some dynamism into just this beautiful structure that can create a passed pawn on the king's side. Really, really nice there. And well, obviously the conversion was pretty nice, but yeah, child's play for an engine like Leela. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that too. Really great game. If you enjoyed the video, why not give a like, follow the channel, take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, which I know you'll enjoy. And but otherwise, thanks very much for watching this video, and hope to see you at the next one.